Just like Michelangelo into the blue on heavenly wings. Cargo ham bones don't take off, no smoke, no mirror, no strings. I can't take off these dark shades. I can only say how it's too beautiful. Our town on TV. Our town, there's you and me. Upside down, hanging out of an airplane.
Welcome to Our Town. I'm your host, Larry Frost, and this is the first show of 2008. And today's show is an awareness to domestic violence. Our first guest is Detective Robert Wile, and the second segment will be Jeanne Geiger Crisis Center Director Suzanne Dubus. So let's get started. Welcome. We're here at the Amesbury Police Station with Detective Robert Wile. Nice to meet you, sir.
Nice to meet you.
Could you tell us a little bit about your background in Amesbury as a police officer?
I transferred to Amesbury in 1995, July of 95. I transferred from Everett. Since I have been here, I've been in uniform, and then shortly after that, my partner and I got moved out of uniform and into the detectives unit. They revamped the detectives unit a few years back, and since then, I'll handle all the domestic violence, sexual assault, child abuse, elder abuse. I do the sex offender registry. We deal with cases with DMH, DMR, DYS, DSS, all those letters. Yeah.
The reason we're here today is because recently there's been a domestic violence case, and I was talking with Detective Wile about what we do in Amesbury to either help prevent that or to either assure that we can make somebody safe that has just gone through a violent attack or just a domestic attack.
Here in Amesbury, things have gotten 100 times better. It's been a complete turnaround with the officers, and it's nothing that I'm doing or nothing that I personally do. It's the officers themselves. They take a lot of pride in their work here. I know a lot of people don't agree with them on that, but in the stuff that I deal with, in dealing with victims of domestic assaults, they're unbelievable because they see a lot more now. The way they deal with the victims is incredible. It's amazing how many times that when I do my follow-ups or I'm dealing with the victims, they say, hey, the officer so-and-so was here, and, he was very nice, which I love to hear because that makes my job easier. Mm-hmm. And we do a lot of extra training here, and I do a lot of teaching with the Jeanne Geiger Crisis Center with Kelly Dunn, with some stuff that we're going to go into in a few minutes. And in the teachings, I always tell them, I'm just the guy that comes and does the follow-ups and does all the aftercare stuff.
You're not usually part of the arrest or anything? It's usually afterwards?
Not, and a lot of times I may not be. No, it may be the officer on the street getting a call, going to the house, seeing what's going on, making the arrest, and after that, the follow-up with the victims it's all what I do. But the officers are they're great. They see things that they may not have used to see because they're more diligent, I guess, in the way that they do their job. And it helps because there are no bad phone calls to the crisis center about, listen, I was there and the police did come, but, I really didn't like the officer. You used to hear a lot of horror stories like that. Not just are here, but are all around. And it's changing. The older generation is leaving. Now I'm the older generation, so I guess it's not.
Is there like an age bracket, like, for example, teenage girls up to 60 or something like that? Or is there any demographic thing that's the city versus us or the town? Or
we won't hear a lot of teenage stuff. Is not that. There's really not a whole lot of it. We won't hear a whole lot of it simply because they look at domestic violence a little bit different. And we did something up here at the high school a few years back, and when they answered a questionnaire, it was amazing. How many that might get pushed.
They accept more.
They don't consider it violence.
Right,
Yeah. A lot of what we get will be family stuff, older, husbands and wives. I want to say maybe 20s to 50s. We really don't hear. We don't really hear a lot about, sorry about that.
I don't even know what the numbers mean. 1, 2, 1, 2.
We don't really hear a lot about elderly. We don't get a lot of that either. We might get a few cases sprinkled here and there. So we're really talking kind of middle-aged.
Now, some can be, it can be verbal.
Yes. Verbal, mental. Verbal and mental are the worst. If something's physical, it's sad to say, but a lot of times those are what you kind of want to see, because if you see a physical injury, then you know something's going on.
Something big, yeah.
Yeah, and if you, in verbal, we don't, some of the verbal and the emotional stuff doesn't come forward right away, but the problems that it creates over a long period of time, it's terrible. I mean, when someone loses their self-esteem, and that's usually what happens with the emotional and the verbal stuff, it takes a long time to come back from that. And it's an easy thing. Us as men, it's hard for us to kind of see that, and when I do a lot of teaching, I tell guys that, you know, because unfortunately it's the big male predominant,
Right, yeah.
you know, office, you know, as far as what police officers, but as far as men, we can't quite understand why, you know, why a girl would do this, or why a girl, you know, why would she stay, or why would this? But when you give your self-esteem taken away, it's bad. It's real bad.
Now, I imagine you have steps that someone can go through if they feel they're in a situation like that, or if they know somebody that's in it and they don't want to disrupt, you know, get something started that may not be severe, but it should get started.
I tell everyone, you can come in and we can talk.
So they can
Doesn't
call
mean
this
I'm
number
gonna
here.
run right back out and I'm gonna lock someone up. That's not the case, you know? If you can catch something early on and we can do that, that's awesome. We can stop things before it does get to the point where, you know, there are physical injuries or someone's, you know, hurt real bad or killed.
Now, after they make the first step, is there some type of protection for them? Or I imagine some people feel like if I start it and then I'm not protected through the process, something more severe could happen down the road.
That goes twofold. That can go that way, and it also happens when they get restraining orders. They say that's just gonna make matters worse. As far as if someone comes in and we just sit and we talk, and we're trying to figure out what we're gonna do, that doesn't say that they're gonna go back and they're gonna tell the abuser, hey, listen, I went over and spoke to someone at the police department. I'll start the process here, but I send every female that I deal with, I send to the Jeanne Geiger Crisis Center. And I do that for a reason. I do that because I'm short-term help, they're long-term help.
Right, yeah, they're in for the long haul.
Yeah, and if they see something that's, that these people are gonna be in danger, they'll call me and say, Bobby, listen, this is not going good, you know, I think we need to step it up.
And they have 2 offices?
2 offices, one here in Amesbury, down in Market Square, and then they have one in Newburyport, in downtown Newburyport.
Now, someone can just call to get information again, or how would they start the process?
They can call me, or they can call them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So either way it will work.
Yeah, both places are open 24 hours. This place, and when they're closed, there's a hotline.
Is it still pretty low? I mean, every time we hear like 1 or 2 cases, which is way too many, but it seems like it just elevates it again, so there might be more happening. But we're really pretty safe in this town, right? I mean, it's not going on regularly, or we just don't know because no one's saying it.
People hear what they want to hear.
Yeah.
I will tell you, from dealing, when I transferred from Everett and I came here, I figured, oh, great, things are going to be quiet. And it's the opposite. There's a lot that goes on in the town. The one thing that I do love about this town, and it's with all over and everything, they're not afraid to report it. They're not afraid to put it in the paper to say, hey, listen, this is going on. It puts more eyes on something. It's not that the town is bad, because it goes on all over the place. This is a very predominant, this is a big working town here. I mean, this is a big middle-class town. It's, you know, no one around here is, you know, we're not all rolling in dough.
Right, right.
We're regular Joe Schmoes around here. And that kind of the middle class, you know what it is? I think they're not in fear of coming forward, you know, more so than upper-class people. I just had a conversation with a doctor about this just probably about 2 hours ago.
Well, which is a good thing. And that's why I want to ask you in for this interview, is because I think we're going to try to get with Susan to go over like a more of administrative type. But where you're in the first lines and you, within a reasonable amount of time, you deal with the victim or the families, so you feel more of the emotion, I would imagine.
Yeah, you don't, everyone says, you know, I don't take this job home with me. Well, and you don't, you try not to, because that can get dangerous too. I mean, that can ruin your home life.
Oh, yeah.
But you do take it home with you. You just try not to mention it. So when you get home, you just, you know, it's there, you're still thinking about it, you just don't talk about it. You know, find some other, some sort of stress release, or try to find some way to get rid of it.
So the steps would be, if someone feels that they're involved in a situation or whatever, or knows somebody, to call the crisis center or you, and then through that, either you or them would give them a little education about what's going on and what the next step could be.
How the system works, yeah.
Yeah.
We let them know that they're not alone, too. And that's the great thing about
That's a big thing, too. Yeah.
That's the great thing about the crisis center. You know, when I send people over there, like to counseling, to therapy, to groups, they're put into groups with, not to say their own, but if it's young kids, it shows them there's other young kids over there in there.
Having the same issue.
Yeah, I mean, if it's middle age, there's middle age groups, and then, you know.
And there's nothing to be ashamed of, it's just
No.
something to, you know, a way of working out to have a peaceful life again.
And even the counselors over there, some of the girls that run the groups over there are young in age, which is good because they can relate more. Some are older. They have one of the girls over there, girls, I keep calling them girls, one of the ladies over there, that runs a self-esteem group. She's unbelievable. If you're not perked up by the time you leave, you know, when you enter there, you will be when you leave, because she has that personality that can bring it out.
Do they assist, or can they get you en route to get, like, if you had to move to a new town or a new building or stuff like that?
They help out with everything. And one of the cases that we're going to talk about, but we're going to just briefly mention later on, the daughter was going through some bad times, and I called over there. What do you need? No, I need this. Yep. I need this. Yep. I need this. Yep. And it's just, you know, we can't do that here. We got no money. We have no
Right,
money here. I
yeah.
mean, they have no money either, but they have money put aside through grants and everything else that goes for this stuff. So it's, they're like, if I didn't have them to work with, I don't think things would be as good as they are around here.
You wouldn't be able to complete it.
No, you wouldn't. I'd be lost.
Yeah.
And that's why when we teach, and when I teach down at the, in Reading at the Police Training Council down there, and now we're teaching a half a day on domestic violence. And I tell, you know, the officers all the time, if you don't know who your advocate is, get to know them, because they're going to make your life a lot easier. You know, that way there you can kind of give them to them. You can continue on with what you're going to be doing. You know they're in good hands. You know they're going to be taken care of. You know if they need anything, they're going to call you. I mean, they don't call the office, hey, looking for me, they call my cell phone.
Now, do you have like a, not a hotline, but I imagine that the whole district of police would have information on people that may be offenders or people to protect or stuff like that? Like, do you work in the report, Merrimack?
We share, yeah. The high-risk team that, that we're all members of.
That's the word I forgot, high-risk
The
team.
high-risk team. The high-risk team that is involved, and on a high-risk team, it's the crisis center runs it. They're the people that kind of take care of everything, and they do a great job at that too. And then for police departments, there's Amesbury, Salisbury, Newbury, Merrimack hopefully will be coming on board shortly, West Newbury. I think that's the police departments.
Yeah.
Did I leave anyone out?
Southampton or anything like that would be New Hampshire, say.
That's New Hampshire.
Yeah.
Let me see, that's it for police departments. Anna Jake's Hospital has someone from their staff that's
Oh, wow.
involved with us
Yeah.
because, you know, this stuff goes into the
There's
hospital, so
steps
they're
that has
seeing
to
some of
come
this
after
stuff
that, yeah.
first too. And so, and you know, and then they have their social workers who will come down and talk to the people, and they send cases over to the team because they have someone sitting on the team. And I know that the CEO, Delia, she is 110% as far as staying on board with this project. Doug Gaudette from Holy Family Hospital, he's involved in it. Doug's like, he's unbelievable. The guy's he runs a batter's intervention. He takes care of a lot of things up at the Holy Family Hospital in Methuen.
Methuen, I was gonna say.
Yeah, Methuen, and he like travels around the country speaking. He's a great guy. He's a great guy to have as a friend too. And who else is involved? The courts, probation. Probation takes care of a lot of stuff over at the courts for us, as far as making sure things are done so that we see everything. And who else? The DA's office is involved in it. And then we have a consultant with us, Diane Roosevelt. She's a law professor Harvard,
Oh, okay.
great lady.
Does she do anything with Comcast? Because I've seen, there's supposed to be a show coming out, not trying to advertise Comcast, but there's one coming out on domestic violence, but it's from the law school. So I thought that some people might.
Oh, no, I think that's Andover School of Law. I think that's the name of it. I heard about that, and I
Yeah.
heard that they're doing a piece. No, that's
Yeah.
not them. Diane's down at,
But still,
down
it's
at
a
Harvard.
group that's focusing on this.
On this,
Yeah.
yeah. And the best thing about this group is it's all these places that used to work, like Crisis Center would do their work,
All
police would do
separately.
their work,
Yeah.
court would do their work, Doug and his folks would do their work up at Holy Family. And instead of just being in different sections, now everyone's coming together.
And
So
these people are here, the crisis center is like the hub of the wheel, basically.
they are.
can
In the
feed
middle is the
information.
victim.
Okay.
We're all out around it, and
Yeah.
then we're all kind of, we're taking care of things on the outside. And, there's more information sharing, there is no territorial garbage that's involved in this. I mean, we're all the same.
Oh, excellent, yeah.
No one's afraid to share information. Newburyport could have a case, and I might know something about the abuser or the victim. So, I'll put my 2 cents in, or, Merrimack could have a case, when they come on board, or West Newbury, because they are. And maybe someone from Newbury knows about it, so it's just, there's a lot more information sharing that goes on.
Now, talking with one of the people from the crisis center, I guess in 2002 was a case that really changed everything for people around here?
Yes, that was Dorothy Cotter. Dorothy was a client of the crisis center, and just shortly before she died, she sat in the office in the other room, and from 4 o'clock to 10 o'clock at night, she sat some points closer than we're sitting now, as I tried to talk her into going into a shelter, some sort of a shelter, just until we could get him locked up, and get everything taken care of. And she didn't want it. She wanted to be with her kids. She wanted to be with her kids in her place, in her familiar surroundings. She ran. She was constantly running and running and running, and she got tired of running. And she was right. She shouldn't have to run,
But I guess, in a sense, she felt it wouldn't happen to her, because it usually happens to somebody else, so she felt safe that it wouldn't happen to her, right?
No, what it was is she was tired. I mean, you could see when you were talking to her, she had had enough, and whatever
At the end of
happened
the
was
road.
gonna happen, and she kind of prepared her kids for, if certain things happen, this is how I want you to follow through. And it did. Personally, I think she knew it was coming, unfortunately. And it didn't matter what I said, and I tried everything. Well, I poured the charm on, and you name it, and she just sat there with a smile on her face and said, I'm not running. No, it was a shame, because she was a very, very nice lady.
How old was she?
At the time, Dorothy she was early, mid-30s.
Okay, so not that she was like an older person that just kind of got tired of life at the same time, it's just that she just got tired of the situation and couldn't run anymore.
She was just tired.
So
She was
from
a-
that, all these organizations, was that the catalyst that got everybody together, you
That was
think?
the
or-
start, yeah. The crisis center sat down and said, they looked at everything and said, how can we make this not happen again? Is it inevitable that it will happen again? Yeah, I mean, look at last year's stats. It was 53 domestic homicides last year in Massachusetts, the highest in a long time.
Is that above
13
national or below national? Do you know?
53, I think it was 56. Actually, it was 56, I think, it ended up as, yeah.
Is that above the national average, you think, per state, or?
I'm not sure what the national average is.
I wasn't trying to put you on the
Yeah,
spot. or
no,
anything.
no, that's fine. I just know it was high. Let's put it this way. 56 minus 13, what's that leave us, 43? That's 43 ladies that died, and children, because their children are part of that died at the hands of.
And changing the life of everything. I mean, everything changes. The victim, like you said, but the families of the victim all the way out. It's
Kids
like a
are
rock hitting the
orphans.
water, yeah.
25 kids were left orphans because of this, when fathers killed their mothers and either didn't have the gall to either kill themselves first or not do it after, they're in jail and their kids are orphans. The other family members will bring them up, but what's to say that these kids are ever going to be normal? I look at Dorothy's kids, and I've talked to the older one numerous times on the phone, and you can't say anything bad either about them when you're interviewing them after, because regardless of what happened there, that's still their father.
Right.
And they still loved
Yeah.
him, and they just wanted to know why he did that, you know. And I don't know, I can't understand how anyone could hit a female. So I know they wouldn't do it to another guy, so, you know, it's a power and control thing is what it is.
That's what I was going to ask you without going too deep. Is there more, I don't really want to get down the whole road here wrong, but is there any stats that says like it's more likely that it's going to happen if economically the guy loses his job, or if the marriage is breaking up because one person doesn't want to be there? Is there anything that psychologists or anything have put together that may rise one to like a number one warning flag over the other?
The FBI actually calls that a, what do they call it? They call it a triple whammy or a double whammy when someone loses their job, loses their girl. I think it's a double whammy. Those are the people that the FBI says you really need to watch. What we do as far as risk assessments and stuff is with domestic violence cases, now not just we, but every department that's involved that I just named earlier, we have a risk assessment form that we'll go over, and
Do you go over it with the victim?
with the victim,
Okay.
yeah. It'll go on certain calls. And if it's a husband and wife fighting, that might not be fighting. If they're arguing, yelling back and forth, whatever, you may not do a risk assessment on that. When you start getting in, and the officers are trained and they're good at it, they know that when they're being lied to, or when someone looks like they might be trying to cover something up because, you know, for a female, first thing that crosses their head, where am I going to live?
Right.
Especially if they're not working, you know, he's the moneymaker, he's the breadwinner. You know, a lot of that stuff happens, and that, unfortunately, that's why they stay. You know, what's going to happen to my kids is another thing. So the officers will look at a case when they could do it on scene, or I'll do it after when I do my follow-ups. And it's a risk assessment form. And when you start asking the questions, if they start answering yes to, usually go like, if you start for like 3 or 4 questions, ask them hey, you know, do you ever do this, you ever do this, you ever do this? And if they answer yes to those, then you get out your sheet, you start asking, there's a whole list
Okay,
of
yeah.
questions, and you show them.
Go to page 2, right?
Yeah, well, thank God there is no page 2, hopefully there never will be. But you show them the form. We show them after and said, you know what, this is a risk assessment sheet, and this risk assessment is the risk of you dying in this relationship. Here it is.
And
It's
they
in
do
black
take it
and white.
serious? I'm not trying to be naive, but do they take it serious, or again, do they keep on saying, this isn't going to happen, does not apply to me?
Both. You hear that. You hear what you just said, you'll hear. You'll hear some that will say, you know, that we'll open them up to maybe, oh, you know what, you're right, but, and at that point in time, that's when we kick them over to the crisis center, and, you know, and then they do their part in it to try to, you know, we'll start the ball rolling.
Yeah.
They pick it up and they keep carrying it, and, you know, I will tell you, since this group got up and running, personally, I think we have stopped some homicides from taking place. And I even told Dorothy's mother, when I talked to her on the phone, it was just prior to Christmas. It was beginning of December was the last time I talked to her, and we were kind of talking about the group, because we wanted her to go to the Crisis Center Gala that they had, you know, to receive, you know, accommodations on behalf of Dorothy, because it's because of Dorothy all this stuff is being done. You know, and I told her mother, I said, you know, it's sad to say, but, you know, and you kind of look at it as Dorothy's dying did a lot of good for a lot of women. It got everyone to shake the cobwebs out of their head, come
Yeah, so
together.
she didn't die for nothing. I mean, that sounds like a
No.
terrible phrase, but it was,
No,
it's just,
yeah.
it
Out
started
of
a
bad
whole-
things, good things
yeah.
come.
Yeah.
And that's probably the one way to look at it, you know, and I look what she did for all of us. I mean, she smartened us up to a lot.
Even you as a detective or as a male, it opens your eyes towards what you might not have seen if you were just, say, a normal worker. Oh, it's like me, like you hear it in the news, and you're aware of it, but as you go through life, you watch your relationship and make sure you don't do anything wrong, of course, but you're impacted all the time by this, either the actual event or getting more educated of what to look for or anybody to help, right? So it's almost like 24 hours a day for you. So you've learned a lot, is what I'm saying, about how to help prevent this.
How to help prevent it? Yeah. Yeah. Hopefully, well, for a few more years, until I can retire. I mean, but, you know, and I look at it this way. Every female out there is someone's brother or sister Obviously, you have a mother
Yeah.
or a father, there should be more people out there helping these victims. And you'll get family members that sometimes will say, well, why are you still in this relationship? Why don't you just leave? Well, hey, why did you just leave? Why doesn't he stop beating you? Why doesn't he stop acting like an idiot? Why didn't he stop, hanging things over your head all the time? It's wrong. I'm not saying that in every case, because unfortunately there are cases out there where we don't get told the truth a lot of times by the victim. We know who they are, and we stop those cases before they go too far. We get people the help they need to get even in those situations.
I think that's the fear for a lot of time. In the olden days was not that the woman was lying, I'm not implying that, but the what ifs, right?
No, the old days, everyone, I can't say everyone knew each other. The old days, the way they would handle it is, they would take them for a ride, take them for a walk. Things would be better, and they send them back. And it's the way you look at it. And plus the fact, no one back then wanted to admit that they were in a bad relationship. It's not something you talk about.
Because it looks like you failed in choosing the partner.
Yep. And you were frowned upon as far as society goes. Nowadays, things are out in the open a little bit more. I'm not saying I'm not saying they don't care about what people think about them, but they're more apt to come forward now. I mean, it's with everything. I mean, you look at people and they say they come out of the closet, or they're gay, or whatever the case may be. You know what? Society is accepting that stuff more and more, as far as saying, you know what, it is what it is.
Yeah.
Deal with it, and it's,
And then you can move on.
yeah, and that's why a lot of people, I think that's why we're getting more and more calls now. Our call numbers were 400 at the end of last year. It's 400 cases last year.
In Amesbury or the
In
area?
Amesbury. No, that's just Amesbury. That's just us.
In wrapping up, is there anything else you'd like to focus on before we wrap up?
No, just that, if you're in a bad relationship and you want to talk, you can call, we can talk. Doesn't mean that someone's going to get locked up. We do have a lot that we can do for you. We have places we can send you that only you and the people working with you will know about. And if things get bad, then they can let me know about it. But no one deserves to be belittled, berated, be hit, be anything. So if you're in that type of a situation, you need to get out.
Thank you, Detective.
Thank you, sir.
The main reason that we came here today was because of a recent domestic case. But overall, we're looking to give you telephone numbers or be able to assist you if you feel like you're in a bad relationship or you know somebody that's in a bad relationship, at least to be able to get some help and go on with it before something serious does happen. So I want to thank you again, Detective. And as you can see, he's really conscientious in what he does do, and he's educated and knows what he's doing. Welcome to the second segment of today's show. Today we're with Suzanne Dubus at the Jeanne Geiger Crisis Center. Nice to meet you, Suzanne.
Hi, nice to meet you.
Could you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. I'm the executive director of the Crisis Center. I came to the Crisis Center in 1995, and I started by working with high school students out in the community. And I'm married. I have an 8-year-old daughter, and I live in East Kingston, New Hampshire. And I was really drawn to this work as a younger woman. My first marriage, I've been married twice, but my first husband was very abusive. And we had, what I thought was a really wonderful kind of passionate dating relationship. And then it was really on our honeymoon was the first time that he hit me. And
That's early.
It's early, and it's not unusual. When the more that we work with clients, the more we hear about this all the time. And so I was married for 4 or 5 years, and we had moved to California, and I lived on top of this mountaintop, and we only had one car between us, and it had no brakes.
No escape.
And so there was really no way for me to get out, and so I saved money very slowly over a period of a couple of years. And he was a commercial fisherman. So when he went out on a fishing trip, it lasted, I think, for 4 or 6 weeks. I kind of forget now, but that was when I left, and I got on a plane and came home and never looked back. So, I went on and I was waiting to go to law school. I'd been waitlisted. I'd gone back to school as kind of an adult learner, and everything was taking me a really long time. And I was working as a paralegal in Boston when Nicole Brown Simpson was murdered.
Oh, yeah.
And I just remember feeling like here is a woman who had, fame, beauty, money, resources, friends and family around her that knew what was going on,
There
and
should have been
still
a
she
real
couldn't.
solid support system.
And it was, and still she couldn't save herself.
Mhm.
And so I remember at that time thinking, do I really want to be a lawyer? Because I was working with all these people who hated their jobs. And I still had this kind of little idealistic idea that if I was a lawyer, I would love it. But I was 35 or 36 at the time thinking, why am I going to be any different?
Mhm.
So someone at the same time from the crisis center was looking for, she needed to make a transition in her own life, and she started asking people in the area who did they know that might work well with teenagers who liked theater and who would be able to speak about this issue. And my name came to her a few times, and she knocked on my door one day, and so that was how my career at the Crisis Center started. And it's been wonderful, and I've been the director for going into my 11th year now.
Before we go to another area, is there a phone number that people could reach the Crisis Center with?
Yeah, let me give that. The hotline number is 978-388-1888, and there's someone 24/7 every day of the year who answers that, and we have well-trained volunteers and advocates who help victims of family violence.
Is that same number that's the Amesbury number, so is there a different number in the report?
No,
or
it's the
starts here?
24-hour hotline. Yeah, this is the hotline number that's for everybody.
Okay.
Yeah.
Before I get you off in another area, do you want to explain the process or how you offer help to people?
Sure. Well, let me explain a little bit about everything that we offer,
Yeah.
if that makes sense, and
Oh,
then
yeah.
I'll start with the hotline. So there are lots of different ways that we get our clients, or clients come and find us. One way is when they finally decide, I can't take this anymore and I'm going to get a restraining order, because they've heard about restraining orders, police may have told them, their friends may have told them. They go to court, and we have legal advocates at the courthouse every day, and we actually help victims fill out their affidavit, because that can be a very overwhelming experience to maybe look at, okay, this is the first time you're telling your story
Mhm.
of the abuse that's happened in 5 years in your relationship, and you need to do it in 2 paragraphs.
Is it usually first-time users also? I mean, or do you find?
No, there's a statistic out there that it takes women 7 to 8 times to leave before they actually leave, and restraining orders may be part of that process or may not. We always tell women, look, if this is going to incite things at home and make it harder, or if this is going to be something that's going to scare the heck out of him and he's going to leave you alone. And so we leave that with them. So anyway, people come to us through the courts. People come to us through the police stations. When police are called out, we have a very good working relationship with all the police departments in our area. But since this is for Amesbury, I can tell you that the Amesbury Police Department truly is one of the most responsive, well-trained departments in our area. And
Thumbs up.
it's absolutely true. And, we go to bat for them all the time, because it's so important. Our relationship with them is so important. Their response in the community is so important. If a woman has a kind of off-color response from the police department, or if they feel like they haven't been heard or cared about, then a lot of times that might have been the first time she stuck her toe in that
Mhm.
water, and the first time that she thinks, I might be able to get out. And if she goes and talks to someone who gives her the impression that they don't care, or there's nothing they can do,
She's going to shy away. And
she's like a turtle going back into her shell.
Yeah.
And so it's so critical. So anyway, I'm so proud of the Amesbury Police Department. And then once people come into our organization, a lot of times people come when they're in crisis. They've gone to court, they've gone to the police station, and now they're trying to figure out, okay, now what? So for kids, we have trauma-based counseling. We really believe that if you want to heal kids, you need to start immediately. You need to help change their belief system. Most kids come in here believing it's okay for their parents to hit each other. And
That becomes normal, basically.
Yeah, absolutely normal. And
Not right, but normal.
Right. And that it's not a shock to them, it's something that they've grown to expect. And so one of the first things we try to do is to help change that belief system to something more healthy, and then give them the tools to tell their own story, which is extremely healing. And then for adults, we have staff lawyers that will help with custody and visitation issues, that help with child
Placement and stuff.
No, what's the word I'm thinking of?
Custody.
No.
That's too simple.
Geez, never mind. Child payment, child.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Child support.
Thank you, child support. Couldn't get that word out of my mind.
Sounds like.
Yeah. Yeah. And then we also have an economic independence program that really helps give former victims the tools they need to live independently. So often when women really want to get out, they don't know how they're going to pay the rent. They may not have ever had a driver's license.
That's what I was wondering.
Or
yeah.
a bank
You bring a good
account.
point.
And other women.
Maybe not even pay the bills either, or at least for a lot of years.
That's right.
Yeah.
And then other women may come from very wealthy families, but have always been denied any access to the funds. So there's a wide range of needs that we really try to help with.
When you were talking about children, is there an earliest age that you would start at? 4, 5,
No.
6, 7?
No, I remember the earliest child we ever had, the youngest child we ever had in a support group was 17 months.
Wow.
And, I remember at the time being absolutely mystified, because I think that the work with children has got to be equally painful and exhilarating.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not sure I personally could wade through the pain, but I remember talking to the therapist and saying, so what do you do with a 17-month-old kid? And this kid just refused to be held by anybody.
Oh, wow.
Refused. And so it took about 8 weeks, and then finally he came in and sat on her lap, and then they could begin to just relate to each other and feel like there was a safe, comfortable
Mm-hmm.
place he could go to. So there really is no minimum. The earliest, the better. The two programs that I think are really, really interesting to talk about, I think they're all interesting, but the two that we're becoming known for, one is the high-risk team, and the Amesbury Police Department is a really critical part of that team. And this team was founded after Dorothy Cotter's murder, if you remember. And at the time, we didn't have a mechanism in place for everybody who might be working with a victim to share information with each other. So in Dorothy's case, the court had a bunch of information. The police had a bunch of information. We had a bunch of information. But there was no way, because of client confidentiality, because we weren't sure what the right thing was or the wrong thing was, there just wasn't anything in place to share all the information. So that is what we have really focused on since her murder, was to change the system. And in our area, we have changed it. So we created the Greater Newburyport High Risk Case Response Team. And it includes Amesbury, Salisbury, Merrimack, West Newbury, and Newbury. And what we do is get together on a monthly basis, and we share information about victims who we think may be at risk of being murdered. And actually, if you just take a look at this is a danger assessment tool, and this is really the basis for the team. And the belief is that domestic violence homicide is predictable and preventable, and because it is predictable. And so this was a tool that was developed by a nurse and a doctor in Johns Hopkins University. And what they did was they interviewed victims that should have been killed. So people that were pushed off of buildings and out of moving cars and who were shot. And then they really wanted to identify what was the escalating behavior, what was happening at home right before this attempted homicide. And so you'll see threats to kill is a huge thing, threats to use a weapon. The victim believes the suspect could or might try to kill her or him. The biggest thing here is strangulation. If there is a perpetrator who actually strangles his victim and this happens so many times. It is telling the victim, I have the power in my hands to cut the air from your throat and kill you.
Not to be morbid, is it more hands? Is that
Yeah, more
the
hands.
main thing? Is not like a scarf or something like that. They want the.
Well, actually, it's a good
power.
question. I actually don't know it.
I didn't mean to put you on the spot.
No, that's okay. But when we've talked about strangulation, in my mind, it's always been hands, because what happens is, and we see this happen a lot, is that women will be strangled, and then as they begin to lose consciousness, he lets go, and he lets her, quote unquote, come back to life. But the message is, I can kill you anytime I want. And so, using this tool, we all meet and really put different cases that we have coming up and talk about what do we each know about this family.
Now, do you generally, not to get you off topic, do you start from the top and go down, or as the information comes to you, you just check off a certain topic?
I think it's as the information comes in. And we also create a timeline so that we can see, is the behavior increasing in rapidity and frequency? This is actually the danger assessment that Dorothy Cotter had. This is actually hers. And
This
so
exact one right here.
We blew it up.
Yeah,
But
yeah,
this is it. And so you can see how incredibly volatile it was.
Almost everyone. The good news, if there's any good news, I don't see the sexual violence one connected. So.
Right. And and that's good to know, because every perpetrator has a different MO, like any other criminal. But so this is a really important piece. So the high-risk team has gotten a lot of recognition from the governor nationwide. We received an award in October in Washington.
Did it kind of start here, nationally, or people starting to use this system?
It is. Well, there are two other communities that use this, and we've actually kind of adapted some of their best practices to this community and have really begun to figure out how to train other communities. So that's what we're doing now. And the second thing that we're actually just developing now is, so these are perpetrators who are very lethal, and these are victims who are at high risk of being killed.
Is the guy a repeat offender usually at this stage here?
Typically,
Okay.
yeah. Typically, you're talking about serial batterers. Yeah. And but there's another group of people, both victims and perpetrators, who are on the low risk end of the spectrum. And these people, right now we're developing some fatherhood programs and figuring out, how do you parent together to raise these children that you have in common when there has been abuse in the relationship.
Mm-hmm.
You both have moved on. There's very, very little risk that you're going to be physically harmed. And so we're really looking at developing some programs for that, because if we really want to talk about true intervention, we have to look at the whole family. We can't just pretend dad doesn't exist in the family anymore. Only in these...
Is that while they're still a family, or after they're separated, you mean?
Typically after they're separated.
Okay.
After they're separated. But, I think that the work of the Crisis Center continually needs to evolve.
Mm-hmm.
Initially we began as a small group that was really just focused on the crisis that walked through the door or came on the phone that day. And we've been really drawing our lens backwards to really, or above it, I should say, to really begin to take in all the different layers of abuse, and how do you truly become free from abuse? What kind of supports do you need in your life to live healthy and independently, and to have great relationships with your kids?
Or just have the freedom that you're supposed to have as a human being.
Absolutely, absolutely. And so it's a fascinating place to work. It truly is. I feel really blessed to be at the Crisis Center, and I know lots of people have said this to me through the years. That's going to be so depressing. And I have to say, certainly, Dorothy's murder was horrible, and it really had a huge impact on this community and at the center. And it really made us look at ourselves deeply about what kind of change, how could we find some grain of truth in her murder that we could use to help empower women down the road. But I have to say, more often than not, the stories that I hear from staff who are in direct service, from the management team, are these wonderful stories of triumph and victory, of people who come in here feeling really less than, really beat up, not only by their spouses, and I don't mean necessarily physically beat up, but really emotionally have been through the ringer.
Just
and
remove one block of confidence at a time.
Absolutely, and don't know how they're gonna to begin. And to see a year later, 2 years later, healthy, happy, getting married again, great job,
Moving on.
confident, thank you so much. This was a painful chapter in my life, but it was a chapter.
I had 2 questions on this right here. Is this like over 6 months, a year, 3 years? When you put a chart together, does the pieces fall pretty quickly together, like within a 2 weeks thing? Is that information gathered and put together?
It's gathered pretty quickly. It depends on how many people at the table have actually touched this family in some way. What's interesting to me is I always thought that when this team began that we would be the ones bringing the cases to the table, and that's not the case. The case mostly is the police, and or someone from a school has called a police officer. So we're actually finding out maybe about some kid who's been a truant and hasn't been going to school and has been acting out. And so as we begin to dig through those layers, then we're finding out mom's story and dad's story, and they're showing up here. But with reference to your timeline, there is no standard timeline. We can
So
gather
it could be
information
open
as
for a lot.
quickly as possible when everyone has some information, and if not, the antenna is up.
So the other question was, overall, people that are watching this show, we still have a safe community or a safe state or a safe country. Is the numbers increasing or decreasing? Or
Well,
just-
this year is the highest domestic violence homicide in Massachusetts in the last 2 decades. This year there were
2008?
2007. So in
Okay.
2007, I believe there were 58 murders, and that was compared
All
to
related to some type of
7.
domestic violence?
Yeah, and that was compared to, I think, 17 the year before. So there's a tremendous upsurge this year. And we don't know why. I've talked to people on the state level, I've talked to people who are at batterers intervention groups. What do you think this is about? My question is it war related? If we're in a time of war and the violence is kind of amped up all around us, is that some kind
Are
of
we charged
tacit?
more? Is that what you
Yeah,
mean?
are we just more prone to violence? Is there something going on with men right now? What is going on? So I don't know the answer to that, but I don't think it's decreasing. I'm sad to say, I think domestic violence is alive and well, and will be for a while.
And I hate to say this statement too, but if the economy does get tighter, do you think it could be worse? I'm not trying to, I don't want it to happen.
No, absolutely, because you know what? There can be a relationship that could be emotionally abusive, that, but as stressors are applied and to someone who is prone to violence and to abuse, absolutely. And what are
Unfortunately,
huge
that's their
stressors?
escape valve, right?
Yeah.
If they're prone to it, that's
It's
how
the thing
they-
that makes them feel better and more powerful. And if the economy is awful, it tends to make people feel very powerless. And I'm glad you brought it up, because that's actually another thing that I have been talking about was, yes, there's the war, but I think the economy probably is.
I have my fingers crossed it doesn't get worse, but just it's one more element to add to the factor of craziness, I think.
Yeah.
Is there anything else you want to bring into it that we might have overlooked?
Well, I'd like to just say something about the White Ribbon Campaign, because I don't know if
forgot about
your
that. I was
viewers,
gonna
that's
ask
okay, because I think that this area has such an opportunity. Detective Bobby Wile at the Amesbury
He's
Police
great.
Department is really the head of the White Ribbon Campaign in this area, and the White Ribbon Campaign was started, I don't know if you remember, in Montreal, I don't remember, I want to say almost 2 decades ago, 15 years ago. A guy barricaded all these female students into
Nursing.
classrooms. I don't think they were,
No, I don't
and
know.
he killed 9 or 13. It was a mass murder in Montreal. One man, many women, and the first of its kind in Canada. I mean, they just don't have that kind of violence in their society. And so the White Ribbon Campaign was a way for men to become involved and stand up against violence against women. And so Bobby Wile is in charge of that, and they truly are these little white ribbons. And there's going to be a big State House gathering on Valentine's Day on February 14th.
Would you go see him to get the ribbons, or go to the State House?
Yeah, I think you could either call us at our business line, which is 978-834-9710, or call Detective Bobby Wile at the Amesbury Police Department. Particularly if you want to sign the petition, and I believe that what is happening is that there's a petition that will be available for men to sign saying, I will not abuse, and I won't tolerate abuse by other men. So it's a wonderful thing. And, again, I talk about how the work has changed at the Crisis Center, and it is so wonderful to have men involved, because this is not a woman's issue, it's not a family issue, it is an issue in our community, and we need our entire community to help.
It may start out that single, but it's just like a rock thrown in water and stuff.
Right.
And you get great support too. I think I read in the paper where some of the banks were helping you out with
we have
financial needs and
fabulous
stuff like
supporters, we really do, and thank God we do, because we need a lot of support. It costs $22,000 a week to provide the services we provide.
So that must be one of the things you love about Amesbury.
Yes, Amesbury has been good to us, and we're good for Amesbury.
Thank you very, very much.
Thank you.
I'm going to ask her just to give the telephone number one more time so I don't have to.
Sure. The emergency hotline is 978-388-1888, and our business line is 978-834-9710.
24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Thank you very much,
Thank
Suzanne.
you.
I got to make sure I pronounce it properly. All right, for our next segment will be the recent snowstorm in Amesbury. We were able to go out during the storm and get probably about an hour's worth of film. You're probably going to see about 15 or 20 minutes. But let's get started. Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Bye-bye. In closing, I just want to thank everyone involved with the positive support of the filming, technical work, and interviewing of our show in 2007. So thank you very much. Work hard, stay healthy, and please take time to care for someone. From our town, bye-bye.
Okay. Just like Michelangelo into the blue on heavenly wings. Cargo ham bones don't take off, no smoke, no mirror, no strings. I can't take off these dark shades. I can only say how it's too beautiful. Our town on TV. Our town, there's you and me. Upside down, hanging out of an airplane.